What's up YouTube? Today we're making a video all about this lens right here, the Canon RF 15-35mm F2.8 lens. Now this is a really cool lens and I'm super excited to talk about it. But first things first, today we got to do a little bit of a hike up to this spot called Tahanic Falls. Let's get right into it. I don't know what it is with my location choice lately, but the past two videos I've gone to waterfalls and both times it's been incredibly misty. Like if you can see my camera right now, it's covered in water. I'm trying to tell if you can tell that my lens is completely soaked right now. I don't think you can tell, but regardless. So today we're talking about this lens right here, the RF 15-35mm F2.8 image stabilized. And so there's two things that make this lens really unique. And number one is the fact that it goes to 15mm rather than 16mm. Every single millimeter when you're going super wide actually matters. And the difference between 15 and 16 is much more significant than you'd think. And the second thing that makes this lens really unique is the fact that it has image stabilization. So the Canon EOS R doesn't have in-body image stabilization at all, but Canon was able to put image stabilization into this lens. So that's really unique because there's a number of 16-35mm f2.8 lenses out there, but as far as I'm aware, this 15-35 is the only one that has built-in image stabilization, which is really cool. All right, so I'm with my brother Lucas and my buddy CJ today, and I'm kind of hesitant to go over here and take photos just because of how much mist there is, but I'm not about to drive 3 hours and not take advantage of it. So Lucas is gonna get up nice and close to the waterfall right now, and we're gonna see if we can take some solid shots of him right in front of this waterfall. Yeah. He's ready. Let's get it. All right, we got the shots we came for. So the 15-35mm focal length is perfect for a couple of different things. And the first thing that I really love the 15-35mm focal length for is just landscape photography. It's wide enough to get those really nice scenic landscapes like this one right here that I just took of my brother. But it also gives you the ability to crop in a little bit. It gives you the ability to go into about 35mm, which is kind of like a portrait focal length, so you can get some of the details of what's going on in the environment. So I took one super wide of my brother in front of the waterfall, and then I was also able to crop in, zoom into 35mm and get a nice kind of like portrait shot of him in front of the waterfall as well. The next thing that the 15-35mm is really good for is vlogging and just making YouTube videos in general. So right now I'm holding the camera just handheld, no tripod, no nothing, and you can see that it's like the perfect focal length at 15mm to get this nice wide angle headshot that you traditionally see people doing when they're vlogging and things of that nature. This is really clutch to have something this wide. For the longest time, I tried to fight like the 16-35mm vlogging lens trend, and I tried to use a 24-70 for a long time, but 24mm just simply is not wide enough for doing stuff like this. It's just too close to your face, and it makes it too difficult for you to get this nice headshot when you're vlogging and just talking to the camera handheld like this. The third thing that this lens does really well is the fact that even though it's a 15mm lens, extremely wide, it still has a front filter thread. So right here, I have a neutral density filter, a variable ND filter actually. So as you can see, I can turn it darker or brighter or whatever I want. Most lenses, when they get past 16mm, don't have a front filter thread. This one has an 82mm filter thread, which is gigantic, but it still gets the job done, and it still allows for you to put a variable ND filter on the camera. It's so clutch for things like making videos, making YouTube videos, whatever, because it allows for you to keep your shutter speed at 1/50th of a second, which in my personal opinion is the best shutter speed for shooting video. You need an ND filter for daylight conditions when you're trying to keep your shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. So this allows for you to do that. Super clutch, and I'm super thankful that Canon did not design this lens with a super bulbous front element that wouldn't allow for a front filter thread. All right, so there's a couple other things that I definitely want to touch on and talk about, but for the time being, I think Lucas is trying to go swimming right now. And how cold is it outside?
Like 38, I don't know.
It's like 38 degrees outside, so it's basically warm for New York right now, but yeah, it's warm enough. Let's go. Let's get it.
Now that kid is a complete nutcase, but all jokes aside, there's a couple more things that we need to talk about as it relates to this lens. So I want to talk about the sharpness, the build quality, and whether or not this lens is worth the money. So from a sharpness standpoint, this lens is really, really sharp. Now I haven't done any real testing of the lens, but from my real world use, just using it on a day-to-day basis, taking photos, I can tell that it is really, really sharp throughout the aperture range and throughout the zoom range. So I'm really, really impressed by the photography image quality of this lens. From a build quality standpoint, this thing is built like an absolute tank. It is extremely, extremely heavy and it is a giant lens. However, on the EOS R, it does balance really, really well. The zoom ring is super nicely tensioned, and the only thing that I really don't like about it is the fact that it protrudes a little bit when you zoom out to 15 millimeters. Now, I'm always concerned about like dust or moisture getting into the zoom barrel when this happens on a lens, but honestly, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and I think that Canon designs their lenses in a way that it's really difficult for dust and for water to get into the zoom barrel. Now, interestingly enough, even though the zoom barrel does protrude quite a bit, when you zoom out to 15 millimeters, the balance of the lens actually stays very, very similar when that lens protrudes and when it comes back to normal. So when I balance it on my Zhiyun Weebill S, I can actually zoom all the way out to 15 millimeter where the lens will protrude and then zoom it back in to 35 where the lens will come back to normal, and it actually maintains the relative same balance on the gimbal. So I don't need to completely rebalance the gimbal when I change the focal length, which is really nice because it allows me to have some variation in my shots without rebalancing the gimbal every single time. Now, is this lens worth the money? So this lens right now I think costs around $2,300 brand new from somewhere like B&H or on Amazon. And to be quite honest, there's no other lenses that can really do what this lens does. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, there's a number of 16 to 35 millimeter f2.8 lenses out there. However, none of them get down to that 15 millimeter focal length equivalent, which is really awesome about this lens. And additionally, none of those lenses have image stabilization. This lens, as far as I'm aware, is the only lens that's capable of getting to 15 millimeter and then zooming all the way out to 35 millimeter, and also comes equipped with image stabilization, which is really, really impressive. Now, it's kind of tough to swallow the cost if you don't really value the image stabilization or just getting that 1 millimeter wider, because there are a couple of Canon EF mount lenses that are 16 to 35 millimeter f2.8s that are really, really good that you can get for significantly cheaper than this. I think there's the version 1, the version 2, and the version 3 of the 16 to 35 millimeter f2.8. All three of those are really, really solid lenses, and you can get them all for significantly cheaper than this lens. To be quite honest, I think it's really a matter of opinion on whether or not you think this lens is worth the money. Because those alternatives exist, and because those alternatives are really, really good lenses, it's hard to swallow the price tag of this brand new RF mount lens. However, if you really value being able to get 1 millimeter wider, and you really value the fact that this has image stabilization built into the lens, the $2,300 is well worth the money. And to be quite honest, this is one of the best lenses that I've ever used in all of my experience with photography. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna wrap up the video here. Excuse my voice for the last little bit of this video. I think I'm coming down with some sort of cold or something like that, but all is good. I'm gonna sleep it off tonight. Anyways, thank you a ton for watching the video. If you haven't already, give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out a ton. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, definitely hit that subscribe button down below. I'm planning to double down this year in 2020 and start uploading twice a week, so I'm super pumped for that. Anyways, thanks again, and I'll plan on seeing you in the video next week. Peace.